Okay, so in the previous classes, if you recall, we started discussing the operating system concepts. We briefly discussed what is an operating system and what are the jobs of operating system, how it acts as a resource manager, and what are the various tasks an operating system carries out. But in detail, we thought that we will study after discussing the data structures, and we also studied the various concepts in data structures like arrays, linked lists, stacks, queues, trees, and graphs. We in the previous class we discussed about graph traversals, depth first search and breadth first search. Depth first search uses a stack, and breadth first search uses queue that we discussed in the previous class. But one thing I would like to bring to your uh, observation is, please study again the concept of tree data structure. We discussed very limited details about tree data structure. We discussed only how a tree can be constructed, what are the various traversals, pre-order, in-order, post-order traversals, and how you can delete a tree. And but there are various varieties of binary tree. Like there are heap trees, there are binary search tree, height balancer tree, uh, there are Huffman tree. There are so many trees, but we couldn't get time to discuss in detail because we have to cover many topics in operating system also. Please explore the concepts of binary search tree, heap tree, and height balancer tree. Then only you'll be able to understand what is B tree. B tree is an extension of binary tree. If you don't understand binary tree, it will be very difficult for us to understand what is B tree. So please try to have an understanding of tree data structure again. Although in the limited amount of time, what we could discuss, I discussed, and many of you suggested that it is better when we discuss the classes in offline. That is making more meaningful and more sense than to discuss in online. I agree with that. The subject is like that, but with our limited available resources, with whatever the ways we can, we will try to learn and put our efforts. So, if time permits, if you have any doubts, I'll give time again at the end of the semester. If we could able to finish all the curriculum in the given time, if there are any empty slots, we will discuss at the end of the semester again. I will give some time to discuss again the topics which you are not feeling confident about. Okay. So having said that, let us continue our discussion on operating systems. Today in operating systems, we discussed about process management. So process management, before that, I'll give a brief idea that we discussed in the previous class. What is an operating system? So operating system is a resource manager. It manages a CPU, memory space, file storage space, input output devices, and the management will be carried out, excuse me, in an operating system are listed like this, right? So process management, memory management, file system management, mass storage management, cache management, input output system management. There are various managements and operating system takes care of it. But today we will discuss a process management. We will start discussing the process management, and we will see what are the various things that we need to keep in our mind when we talk about process management. Then we will try to finish that in the upcoming classes, but today it will not finish. We'll keep discussing that and see how long it will take. So let us discuss about process management. A process management, if we have to understand, you have to understand what is a process. A process is a program in execution. Okay, whenever we are writing a program in a C or a Java or some other programming languages, when you are compiling, you are turning into an executable code. When you are running it on the machine, it is a program. It is in executing a program. When a processor is executing a program, the process, it will convert into a process. So process is a program in execution, in short words. Okay. So when a process is executing, it may need certain resources like CPU time, memory, files, input output devices to finish that task. Okay, so these resources are typically allocated to the process while it is executing. While the process are executing itself, these resources are provided. There are so many processes will execute. Uh, it's a collection of, when I say system, a system is a collection of processes. Operating system process executing system code and user process executing user code. All this process run may execute concurrently. Concurrently means there are so many processes on the background it is running without our knowledge. For example, I'm muting all because there are a lot of some noises coming. Okay, for example, you see this. I'll open a task manager. You see this task manager. The process, when you click the option process, we have 4 applications running: Google Chrome, Microsoft, Sticky Notes, and Task Manager. There are 4 processes, but you see on the background process there are 56 background processes which are running, which I am running. Okay, so for example, if you observe that there is a Skype process running, there is VMware. VMware is a virtual memory that where we can load other operating systems that we discussed. Word web is a dictionary, which are the running some background process which are running. Suppose audio device, then USB. All these are which I'm running. But there are Windows process. Windows process operating system is executing some process. On the background, operating system is running a client server runtime process, desktop window manager, some registries, some services with respect to various uh, various uh, required programs it is executing. Okay, local services, network services, all the services are running by operating system. You see this total now 90 window processes are running, then 56 oh, sorry, 55 user processor running with 4 applications. Now, all these are executing concurrently. You see this, all this process memory is allocated memory, it is running. Some process is taking some memory, even though it is very less, but memory is allocated. Okay, memory is allocated and it is there in the RAM. Whenever I start executing that, it will come into the processor and it will start. 76% of my RAM memory is occupied. Anyway, so all these processors are executing concurrently. When an operating system is running, some process operating system processes execute system code, user process execute the user code. So all this process management will be carried out by uh, the operating system with the name called process management. Let us understand the process state. A process state is said to be different states. Whenever a process is created, it is considered as a new state. It will be kept in the new state, and when it is ready to execute, it will come into the ready state. It is admitted, getting into the ready state. Whenever it is in the queue, the ready, this is a queue which is waiting to be executed. Running is where the process will execute a process. Process, when it is created, it will be new. When it is admitted, it will be in the ready state. Once it is in the ready state, it will schedule to dispatch to execute a process by the processor. It will, this process is running now, which means execution is happening by the processor. And if it is finished, then it will exit and terminate it. If the process is finished its job, it will exit and terminate. By some chance, a process in between requires some input output request or some event is waiting, then it will go to the waiting state. Once that input output request is finished or event completed, then again it is kept into the ready state waiting for its execution. Or in between some interrupt happened, some power went off, some hardware interrupt happened, then the process is discarded and again kept into the ready state. So these are the various states in the process. Is this make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's what I have explained here. So new is a process being created, running is the instructions being executed, waiting is a process waiting for some event to occur, whether it might be input output or a signal, or ready state is a process waiting to be assigned to a processor. Terminated, it's finished its execution. These are the various states. Okay, now let us understand what is process control block. Each process is represented in operating system by a process control block called PCB. it is also called task control block. Each process, when it is created by an operating system, it maintains various details of a particular process. For example, what is each process has a unique process number, and it will define on which state, what is a process state, whether there is a new state or ready state or running state, waiting state, which state that process is belong to, the process state is defined, the process number is defined, the program counter is defined, the registers, the memory it is used in the processor to execute it is assigned, what are the memory limits, list of open files, all the accounting information, excuse me, memory management information, everything is kept. All the information of a particular process is represented using a process control block. Okay, so each process is represented in the operating system by a process control block. We say simply process, but each process has all these details. Is this clear? Okay, let us go move forward. So there is a concept called context switch. We have to understand the concept of context switch. Context switch happens when an operating system will executing process P0, it will leave this process P0 and start executing process P1. Because the operating system is executing the process concurrently, many processes are running. So what processor will do is it will execute some process for some time, then it will leave that process and start executing another process some other time. Now when it is leaving and going to another process and coming again to the process P0, so let us assume that there are two processes, process P0 and process P1. Each processor has process control block. PCB, we call that as a PCB0. For P1, it is PCB1. When an operating system is changing from one process to other process, before that, it has to save the information of process P0, that is the save state, into PCB0, then reload the state from PCB1 to execute. Then after executing some time, it will save the state of PCB1, then it will reload the PCB0 and it will start executing. You see this, the execution is shown in a blue color. The process P0 is executing and it is saving the process control block of process 0, and it is saved. After saving, it is reloading P1, operating system is reloading P1, then P1 is executing. P1 is executing. After some time, some interrupt or a system call, it is saving again PCB1, process control block 1, then reloading process control block 0, and it will start executing. So switching the CPU core to another process requires performing a state save of current process and a state restore of a different process. This task is called context switch. Is this clear? You want me to repeat this? What is context switch? Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
So process will save a state of a current executing process and reload the another process to switch from one process to other process is called context switch. Okay. So when a process is scheduled, it is kept in the ready queue. Then it will, once it is in the ready queue, then the next state, it will go into a processor to execute and finish its job. So once this process is executed, it will leave. Otherwise, if there is some IO request, it is kept in IO input output wait queue. Then again, it is placed in the ready queue. If it is a child process is created, it is kept in the child termination wait queue. After child terminates, again it is placed in the ready queue. Some interrupt happened, then it is kept in the interrupt queue. After interrupt occurs, then it is again kept in the ready queue. Or it's because many processes are executing on the background concurrently. When a context switch happened, when it time finished, Then again for next turn, it will wait into the ready queue. So there are various ways the process is scheduled. Now, when the number of processes currently in the memory, when how many processes are currently in the memory which are running is called the degree of multiprogramming. Okay, this is called the degree of multiprogramming. The process could issue an input output request then placed in an input output queue. The process can create a new child process then placed in a wait queue. Then it awaits the child termination. If a process could be removed forcibly from the core as a result of interrupt or a time slice expire, again put it into the ready queue. These are the various stages where the process scheduling will takes place. When we talk about process scheduling, we also need to understand some concepts of CPU scheduling. The CPU scheduler will select the process which need to be executed by the CPU from the ready queue. I repeat it. The CPU scheduler will select from among the processes that are in the ready queue, allocate the CPU to one of them. Okay, so once the process is in the ready queue, before it comes to the running state, the CPU will schedule the which process need to be executed. In CPU scheduling, there are two types. One is preemptive scheduling and non-preemptive scheduling. Preemptive scheduling means when a process is running, in between it can leave before it finished. Other process will start executing. Non-preemptive means once the process execution happens, it will not leave in between. It will continue its execution till it finish. Then only the CPU will be free. There are non-preemptive scheduling algorithms. There are preemptive scheduling algorithms. So CPU scheduling decision, whether it is a preemptive, non-preemptive, can be taken using under four circumstances. Means when a process switches from running state to waiting state because of some input output request, when a process switches from running state to ready state, or when a process switches from waiting state to ready state, when a process terminates. These are the four possible cases. Process CPU schedule will happen only if the process is in the ready state, because you see this, the running will happen only if the process is in the ready state. If it's in the waiting state or if it is in the new state, it will not worry. All we are concerned about is when a process need to be running, then it has to be in the ready state. So whenever there is in a ready state, we can call them as a when an interrupt occurs and so these are the four possible states. Based on that, we will decide whether preemptive or non-preemptive. When it is in a ready state, then we need to schedule. That is our main concern. Okay, whether it is in waiting state or terminates, then no problem. Where the waiting state, again it has to come to the ready state. Okay, so there are few CPU scheduling criteria that we need to keep in our mind when we talk about CPU scheduling. So we need to increase the utilization of CPU. We want to keep CPU as busy as possible. Okay, this is CPU utilization. The number of processes that are completed per unit of per time unit. How many processes work done? Is a throughput is another criteria. Turnaround time is the interval time of submission and completion. When it is submitted, when it is completed, it is called turnaround time. The waiting time is the sum of periods spent in the waiting in the ready queue. Response time is how much time it is kept in the ready queue. Means how many time from the submission of a request until the first response is produced. So these are the various criteria. But for the time being, we will keep in our mind only waiting time. We will keep waiting time into our consideration. We will try to see that to decrease the average waiting time of a schedule. If waiting time is decreased, then more number of processes will execute. So that is the idea. There are various scheduling algorithms: first come, first serve, shortest job first, shortest remaining time first, round robin scheduling, and priority scheduling. There are many other scheduling algorithms also, but we will discuss all these five. Today's class, we will discuss up to shortest remaining first. Next class, on Thursday class, we'll discuss round robin scheduling and priority scheduling and we'll discuss the other topics. But today's class, we will discuss this first three: first come, first serve, shortest job, and shortest remaining first. So first come, first serve scheduling, it's a very simple CPU scheduling algorithm. Whichever process comes first, will execute first, will be served first. It is simply like a queue. Whichever comes first will be served first. The process that requests CPU first is allocated the CPU first. When a process enters the ready queue, the process control block is linked onto the tail of the queue. So when a process is free, it is allocated to the process at the head of the queue. The running process is then removed from the queue. Okay. So simple queue using linked list is the process one way to look at the first come first serve schedule. Now let us see one example. Consider that all the process arrival time of each process is 0. At 0 second, all the processes arrived. This is a burst time, means the time taking to finish its job is the burst time. The burst time is the time taking to finish, to complete the job for a particular process is burst time. So the length of CPU burst given in milliseconds, this is milliseconds. Let us assume that process P1 takes 24 milliseconds, process P2 takes 3 milliseconds, process P3 takes 3 milliseconds. Now assume that the order which it is scheduled in P1, P2, P3. Now P1 is scheduled first. P1 will wait 0 milliseconds. This is a GNAN chart. And you can see that P1 coming first, it will wait 0 milliseconds. To finish its job, it will take 24 milliseconds. After 24 milliseconds, P2 is kept. P2 will take 3 milliseconds to finish its job. So 24 to 27, P2 will finish. After P2, P3 will come into the picture. P3 will wait 27 milliseconds and P3 will kept in the processor to execute. So the total waiting time is P1 waited 0 milliseconds to execute because the processor is available. P1 is the first process, it is allocated. So P1 waiting time is 0. P2 waiting time is P1 is occupied by the processor. So processor is not available. P2 arrival time is also 0. So P2 waited 24 milliseconds. In order to get the processor for P2, it waited 24 milliseconds. P3, it waited 24 plus P2, 27 milliseconds P3 waited. The average waiting time is 0 plus 24 plus 27 divided by 3 will give you 17 milliseconds. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Anyone want me to repeat this slide? Okay, so the average waiting time is 17 milliseconds. Can you tell me how we can improve this? How we can improve the waiting time? I mean, like decrease the average waiting time. Is there any way we can decrease the waiting time?
If we start from P3,
Why P3?
like then it will P2 waiting time will be 3 millisecond and for P1 it will be 6.
Any other approach? Any other response?
सर अगर हम तीनों प्रोसेस को अलग अलग एग्जीक्यूट कराएं तो
Assume that you have one processor. Then if you are able to manage in one processor, if you execute in multiple processes, then that will be efficient, right?
ओके सर
Okay. Suppose if I make in a different order, suppose I'm executing P2 first. Okay, I'm executing like this, P2 first. What is the waiting time of P2?
जीरो
0, right? P2 waiting time is 0. Next I'm executing P3. P3 waiting time is 3 milliseconds because P2 is occupied by the processor. P3 will wait 3 milliseconds. So P3 will take 3 milliseconds. What is the P1? Next, after finishing P2, P3, after 6 milliseconds, P1 will allocate. Now, what is the waiting time? P2 waited 0 milliseconds. P3 waited 3 milliseconds, P1 waited 6 milliseconds. What is the average waiting time? 6 plus 0 plus 3 divided by 3, that is 3 milliseconds. It's much better, right? 17 milliseconds, 3 milliseconds. We drastically decreased through 3 milliseconds. The idea is, in order to decrease the average waiting time, if you consider whichever the job having shortest burst time, if you keep them as first, then your average waiting time will decrease. I repeat it. If you consider to execute the process which has less burst time, then the process will finish its job and the waiting time for the next process will be less. Okay. So the average waiting time under FCFS policy, first come first serve policy, if the first coming processor, if it is taking more time, then the average waiting time under first come first serve is very long. The average waiting time is generally not minimal, may vary substantially, depends on the CPU burst times, which will vary greatly. This is called convoy effect. Convoy effect means if a military people are going or some other CM or PM chief ministers are going, then all other people has to wait. Okay, no matter how long it will take. This is called a convoy effect. Other process wait for the one big process to get off the CPU. This results in lower CPU and device utilization for the shorter process, because the shorter process were not allowed to go first. So FCFS is a non-preemptive algorithm, means once the process is allocated, once P1 is allocated, it is not leaving in between. So process, once it is allocated, it will continue execution until it finished. Then only P2 will come, then only P3 will come. That is the preemptive or non-preemptive algorithms. Preemptive means it will leave in between. It will leave in between. That is preemptive. That also we'll discuss. Okay. So FCF scheduling is a non-preemptive. Once CPU is allocated to a process, the process keeps the CPU until it releases CPU either by terminating or request an input-output. FCFS is very troublesome for interactive systems, which is important in each case to get a share of CPU at regular intervals. So this will be disastrous to allow one process to keep the CPU for an extended period. Okay, so the second approach is shortest job first scheduling. You observe that whichever the process having shortest time, then you execute that process. When a CPU is available, in shortest job scheduling, the process is allocated with the smallest next CPU burst. So if the next CPU burst of two processes are same, if P2, P3 having same burst time, then whichever comes first, that will be executed first to break the time. Now let us take one example. So P1, P2, P3, P4, whichever among this burst time given, which is having lowest burst time? P4. P4 is having only 3 milliseconds. So P4 is kept first, 3 milliseconds. Then after the next lowest job is P1. Then P1 is kept second. So P1 waited for 3 milliseconds, then it started its execution. Then next lowest shortest is P3. P3 will execute after P1. Then last P2, because P2 is having more burst time, it will execute it at the end. So the average waiting time is P4 waited 0 milliseconds because that is lowest job, so it waited 0 milliseconds. P1 waited 3 milliseconds. P2 waited 16 milliseconds. P3 waited 9 milliseconds. Total average time is 3 plus 16 plus 9 divided by 4. That will be 7 milliseconds. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
For this same example, if you take FCFS, if we consider first come first serve, what is the waiting time? Tell me. If it is first come first serve, what is the average waiting time? What is the average waiting time for P1? First come, first serve. P1 will wait how long? How long time?
0.
0, because this is first come, first serve. Assume that this is FCFS. FCFS. So P1 will wait 0. P2 will wait how long time?
6 millisecond.
6 milliseconds. P3 will wait
14.
6 plus 8, 14. P4 will wait 14 plus
21.
7, 21. So total average waiting time is 0 plus 6 plus 14 plus 21. This will be 6 plus 14, 20, 20 plus 21, 41, right? 41 divided by 4. This will give you 10.25, right? This is correct. If it is FCFS, first come first serve, process P1 will allocate. It is 0 waiting time. P2 will be allocated because after P1, because P1 is taking 6 milliseconds, so P2 will wait 6 milliseconds. P3 will wait after P2, so P3 will wait 6 plus 8, 14 milliseconds. P4 will wait 6 plus 8 plus 7 milliseconds, that is 6 plus 8, 14 plus 7, 21 milliseconds. Total average waiting time is 0 plus 6 plus 14 plus 21, 6 plus 4, 20 plus 21, 41 by 4, 10.25 milliseconds. So if you go for FCFS, you will take 10.25 milliseconds. If you go for shortest job first, you will take only 7 milliseconds. Which is better?
Sir, obviously 7th.
After 7 milliseconds, right? Because 7 milliseconds is less time. If average waiting time is less, then your CPU utilization is more. But the problem with shortest job first is, if you have to schedule the shortest job first, you need to have a knowledge of burst time. You need to have how long each process will take to finish or complete its process, which is not possible to estimate in real life. In real life, we will never know how long a process will execute. Okay, so because of that reason, although SJF algorithm is optimal, it cannot be implemented because there is no way we can know the length of CPU burst. So this is the main disadvantage. We will not able to implement practically because we'll never know what is the CPU burst time for a particular process. But this is the best algorithm we have. So although it is not practically possible, still we are discussing, because any other scheduling algorithm, when we say this is the best, we will compare with shortest job first and see that if your average waiting time is as close as enough as shortest job first, then your algorithm is good enough. Okay, so the shortest job first algorithm can be preemptive or non-preemptive, or it can leave in between, or it may not be leave. It depends on the choice when it arrives a new process in the ready queue, or what we have to make, whether it will be leaved or not leaved. I will discuss one example. So the next CPU burst of the newly available process may be shorter what is left of the currently executing process. Then in that case, imagine a process is running currently by a processor. A new job is coming into the queue, which is taking less time, than the current process. Suppose imagine that the process currently executing takes 10 milliseconds. A new process is coming into the queue, it will take only 2 milliseconds. Now the process will schedule the newly arrived process, or it will continue its execution of the old process. If it is continue to execute the whole process, then it is a non-preemptive. If it is comparing the executing time of the current process and the newly arrived process, whichever is shorter, If it is allocating the shorter one by replacing the current process, then it is preemptive algorithm. Okay, so the preemptive shortest job first algorithm will preempt the currently executing process, whereas non-preemptive scheduling algorithm will allow the current running process to finish its CPU burst. If it is leave in between, preemptive shortest job scheduling is also called as shortest remaining first scheduling. Okay, so we will see that how it will happen. So shortest remaining first, it has
Sir, how it will know that the job that has come right now has less CPU burst than the job that is currently going on?
no, we don't know. We don't know that. We were discussing by some examples only, but in real life, we will never know a process burst time. How long it will take, we never know.
Okay, sir. So then how this shortest time remaining first will decide, sir, whether it should switch to the next process that has arrived or whether it should
We will
execute
we
the
will
current
discuss
one?
that. We will discuss that. You will understand that. See, shortest remaining
Sir,
time
there is a
first,
doubt.
shortest remaining time first is also one of the category of shortest job first. When preemptive shortest job first scheduling is known as shortest remaining first. What I'm saying is preemptive. You understand the difference between preemptive or non-preemptive? What is the difference between preemptive or non-preemptive? You have to understand it clearly. Okay, preemptive means when a process is executing, it will not leave in between. It will continue its execution. Okay, see, shortest job first that we discussed in this case, this is a non-preemptive algorithm because once a process is allocated, it will finish. It is not leave in between. It is a non-preemptive. This example that we discussed is non-preemptive. It will not leave in between. Once P4 is allocated, it is finished. Then only it will come to the next process. Once P1 is allocated, it will completely execute it till it finished. Once P3 is allocated, it will complete its execution till it finished. This is non-preemptive algorithm. This FCFS also what we discussed is a non-preemptive algorithm. Once P2 is allocated to the processor, it will continue its execution till it finished. P3 will allocate, it is continually will execute till it finished. P1 will allocate, it will continue to execute till it finished. This is also non-preemptive algorithm. Non-preemptive means the process will not leave in between. It will continue to execute until it finished. Preemptive means it will leave in between. Preemptive will leave in between the execution. The preemptive shortest job for scheduling is called shortest remaining first. I will discuss this example. Shortest remaining first, how it will work, we will see this example. Imagine that this is the example. Process P1 arrival time is 0, burst time is this 8 milliseconds. Process P2 is 1, arrival time is first millisecond. Process P2 burst time is 4, so on and so forth. Okay, now at 0th second, which process will be allocated? Which are the process available at 0th second? Only P1. There are no other process. P2 will arrive at 1 millisecond, P3 will arrive at 2nd millisecond, P4 will arrive at 3rd millisecond. At 0th millisecond, there are no other process available. So process P1 is scheduled. Process P1 is scheduled for 1 millisecond. After first millisecond, we have, after first millisecond, P2 will come. Okay, after first millisecond, P2 will come. Now P1 is allocated. This is finished 1 unit of time. The remaining time is 7 milliseconds.
1 milli.
Which is lower? At first millisecond we have two processes, P1 and P2. Which is lower, 7 or 4? Which is shortest?
4.
4.
4.
So process P1, it is not completed, but it will leave. It will leave the processor. It will go and wait. Process P2 will execute. Because the shortest remaining time is P2. So P2 will start executing the processor. Okay. So P1 is not finished. It did not complete it, but it left in between. This is called preemptive scheduling. It is not finished. It is preemptive scheduling. Okay. Now, after 1 second, at the second millisecond, P3 will also come. After second millisecond, how much is the remaining time for process P2? At the second millisecond, what is the remaining time for process P2? 3, right? See, process P2 is arrival time is at first millisecond. At the second millisecond, how much work done by P2? How much remaining time it will take? At the second millisecond, how much time P2, what is the remaining time of P2? At second millisecond, what is the remaining time of P2? 3 milliseconds, correct?
Yes, sir.
Guys, is it not clear?
Yes, sir.
P2 is arriving at first millisecond. At the second millisecond, how much is the remaining time of P2? Total bus time is 4. It is arriving at first millisecond. After at second millisecond, what is the remaining time of P2? 3 milliseconds.
3 seconds.
Correct? Now at second millisecond, it will compare which is short, 3 or 9. Which is shorter?
3. 3 P2.
P2. So P2 will continue. At the second millisecond also P2 will continue. Okay. P3 will not come into the picture. P2 only will continue. Okay. Now at third millisecond, what is the remaining time of P2? At the third millisecond, what is the remaining time of P2? This will be
2.
minus 1, 2 milliseconds, correct? At the third second. At the third second, P4 is coming. So you will compare 2 and 5. Which is shortest?
Again P2.
P2. So P2 will continue. P2 will continue how long? Till 4 milliseconds. So at process P1 is allocated because no other process is available 1 unit of time. At first second, you observe that P2 is lesser. So you allocated P2 for next 4 seconds. At the 5th millisecond, you see this at the 5th millisecond, all the processors arrived. The arrival time 0, 1, 2, 3, all the processors are arrived. So this process P2 is finished its job. Now the remaining process is 7, 9, 5. Which is the shortest?
P4.
P4. Because it is having only 5 milliseconds. So P4 is allocated. Okay. After P4 finished its job, we have P1 and P3. Which is having shortest time?
P1.
Which will take only 7 units of time, right? So it will start at 10th second. P1 is allocated. It will allocate 17 units of time. Once P1 is finished, then P3 will execute to the rest of the time. Okay, so that's what I have written here. Observe this. Process P1 is started at time 0 because it is the only process in the queue. Process P2 arrives at time 1. The remaining time for process P1 is 7 milliseconds, which is larger than the time required by the process 2, which is 4 milliseconds. So process P1 is preempted and process 2 is scheduled. Likewise, every time you will keep comparing whichever the shortest remaining time first, you will allot it. Now let us calculate the average waiting time. The average waiting time, I will remove this, okay? For this example, the average waiting time is, what is the average waiting time? Process P1, what is the process P1 waiting time? Process P1 waited 10 milliseconds here. You see this process P1 waited 10 milliseconds, but 1 millisecond is already finished. 1 millisecond, it is interlude already finished. So the total average waiting time is 10 minus 1. Is this clear? Process P1 waited 10 milliseconds to take its turn, but 1 second it is already finished. So the average waiting time is 10 minus 1. Is this clear?
No, sir. How it is 10?
Array, when it is scheduled, process P1 when it is scheduled. See here. This is P1, na?
Yes, sir. Yes.
P1
Got
is waited how long? Process P1 waited 0 time, but it interlude, it left in between, na? It executed only 1 second. But again it waited how long time? It again, to finish its job, it waited 10 more seconds, correct? Guys, what is this? What is this process? This is P1 only, now.
Yes, sir.
P1 waiting
Yes.
time, to get its time after 10th millisecond only P1 is scheduled, right?
Yes, sir.
This is the timeline. But it finished 1 millisecond already. After first millisecond it left. So you have to subtract it. Okay, 10 minus 1 is the average waiting time for P1. What is the average time of P2? P2, how long it is waited? First millisecond.
1.
It waited first
0, sir.
millisecond. But arrival time of P2 is what time?
1.
So it should be 1 minus 1. When it is allocated minus arrival time, you have to take how long it is waited minus arrival time. That is 1 minus 1. Okay. What about P3? P3, when it is got its turn, P3 waited 17 milliseconds. Correct? P3 to start executing, it waited 17 milliseconds. But you cannot count 17 because P3 arrived at second millisecond. So you have to subtract. It did not arrive at 0. It arrived at second millisecond. So the total average waiting time for P3 is 17 minus 2. Likewise, P4 how long it waited? 5 milliseconds. But the arrival time of P4 is third millisecond. So it waited only 2 milliseconds. So 5 minus 3 is the waiting time for P4. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
So what is average total waiting time? 10 minus 1, 9 plus 1 minus 1, 0 plus 17 minus 2, 15 plus 5 minus 3, 2. 10 plus 15, 20, sorry, 9. 9 plus 15, 24 plus 2, 26 divided by 4, 6.5 milliseconds. Okay. Is this clear? This is called preemptive shortest job first. That's what I have mentioned here. Preemptive shortest job scheduling is also called as shortest remaining first scheduling. It will leave in between it. P1 left in between. Okay. Is this make sense?
Yes, sir.
Now imagine it is a non-preemptive. The same example, imagine it is a non-preemptive. Then what would be your waiting time? If it is a non-preemptive, which is the shortest time? Which is the shortest job?
For P2.
P2 will execute first. So the waiting time for P2 is 0. Right? So next job is
P4.
P4 will wait how long time?
Sir, 4.
4 minutes, 4 milliseconds. Then
P1.
what is the waiting time?
Sir, 9.
5 plus 4, 9. What is the next process is P3. P3 will wait 9 plus 8. That is 17, correct? What is the total waiting time? Average waiting time? 9 plus 17 plus 4. 17 plus 4 is 21 plus 4, 30. 30 divided by 4 is what? Which will be 7 point
7. 5.
2 will come. 7 fours are 28. 5, right? 7.5 milliseconds. Is this clear? This is if you consider arrival time 0. If you consider all the process is coming at arrival time 0. Now, if you consider FCFS, what will happen? For FCFS, whichever comes first, that will execute first. Tell me what is the average waiting time for FCFS? So this waiting time for P1 is 0. P2 will wait 8 milliseconds. P3 will wait 8 plus 4, 12 milliseconds. P4 will wait 12 plus 9, 21 milliseconds. So total average waiting time is 8 plus 12, 20, 20 plus 21, 41. 41 by 4 will be 10.75. Correct?
Two five.
Sorry, 25. This is FCFS. Okay. Now, if it is arrival time, if you consider in this fashion only, if you consider arrival time in this fashion, then slightly this will change. If you consider the arrival time in this fashion, at arrival time 0, process P1 will execute. Consider the same arrival time and do the shortest job first with a non-preemptive. Consider this arrival time, shortest job first. What will happen? Now the waiting time will be first at 0th second, P1 is there. So P1 will allocate. P1 waiting time is 0. P2 will wait how long? 8 milliseconds, correct?
Yes, sir.
So 8 milliseconds it will wait. Then which process will execute?
P2. P2.
No, shortest job first. Non-preemptive shortest job first with this arrival time. After 8 seconds, all the process will be there. Now which job will execute? P3 or P4? P4 will execute because this is the shortest job. Okay. So P4 will execute next in the non-preemptive shortest job first. So the average waiting time for P4 is 8 plus 4, 12. Next P3 will execute. That is 12 plus 5, 17. So now the average waiting time is 12 plus 8, 20, 20 plus 17, 37. 37 divided by 4 is what? 9s are 30, sorry, 8s are 36, right? Right. 4,
9.25.
9.25.
9.36, 9.25. Does this make sense? How we are doing that, calculating different waiting times? If you don't want to consider all this, you can consider in a different way also. In non-preemptive shortest job first, you want to schedule the first job which is having lowest. Which is having lowest? 4, right? But in order to execute P2, P2 has to wait, arrival time is 1. Then P2 has to wait how many seconds? Imagine you want to execute you don't want to consider the arrival time in this fashion. You want to consider only as per the burst time. As per the burst time, the shortest job is P2. But if we have to keep P2 first, it has to wait how many seconds when it's arriving? At first millisecond.
0.
No, P2 is arriving at first millisecond. Then how long? See, imagine, I'll repeat it, what I'm saying. You are assuming non-scheduling shortest job first. We scheduled this as per arrival time. As per the arrival time, we scheduled this non-preemptive shortest job first. You will take 9.25 milliseconds, correct? We consider arrival time based on 0. This is also arrival time 0. This is non-SJF only. In this case, we consider all process will come at the same time. Then we got 7.5. In this case, we consider the arrival time. This is FCFS. Now what I'm saying is, we will consider arrival time. We will consider bus time also. But we will allocate only the shortest job first. We will not allocate the process. Although it is arrival time is 0, we will not allocate this. We will wait for its turn. Now, if that is the case, if you are going strictly on burst time, how much time P2 will wait?
1 millisecond.
1 millisecond it will wait, correct? After first millisecond, P2 will start executing. How long? Next minimum process is this one, right? After 4 seconds, this will execute, right? Remaining time, if you consider the same, only P2 will execute at the first millisecond. The total will change by slightly one value. 30 will become plus 1. 31. 31 divided by 4 is? What is 31 divided by 4?
7.75.
7.75. Is this make sense? Why we are getting this 7.75? Why we are getting 31? The remaining waiting time is same. Only we are shifting 1 millisecond because of P2, which is arriving at arrival time 1. Then the waiting time of P2 will be just 1 second. So this one value will be added here. Instead of 0, one value will be added, but remaining waiting time will remain same. Then your waiting time will be 7.75. Is this clear? Okay, so if you assume that non-preemptive shortest job scheduling will result in average time of 7.75 in this case. They considered only whichever shortest job first they allocated, and they considered one waiting time, but remaining waiting time is same. So it will give you 7.75 that we calculated, 31 by 4, 7.75 milliseconds. But when a problem is given to you, you should be very careful based on when it is arriving, how much the burst time. You have to keep comparing whether it is leaving or not leaving, whether preemptive, non-preemptive, all things. If you compare, the waiting time will change for each case. Okay, the FCFS will take 10.25 milliseconds. If you consider the strict arrival time, non-shortest job first will take 9.25 seconds. If arrival time is 0, then non-scheduling job first will take 7.5 milliseconds. But if you consider the burst time strictly and based on whichever the shortest job first will go first, then you consider only that waiting time. Then your waiting time non-preemptive, this is also non-SJF, will take 7.75. Okay. However, I'll tell you one thing. The shortest job first or shortest remaining first will not be practically implementable, but we are discussing to understand how a preemptive works, how a non-preemptive works, how we can process will take care in the preemptive scenario, non-preemptive scenario, what is the best case when it happens. To compare the other algorithms, we will keep the shortest job first, shortest remaining first as the best algorithms. Is this clear? Okay, round robin we will discuss in the next class. Because time is up, round robin we will discuss in the next class. I'll upload the slide now. If you have any doubts in today's class, you let me know, because it's already 10 minutes crossed. We will stop. If you have any doubts, let me know. Otherwise, I'll upload the slide. If you don't have any doubts, we'll stop here. We'll continue on Thursday class. You can ask if you have any questions. Check in your files. I uploaded today's class slide. Today's class slide uploaded in your Teams, and verify whether you'll be able to see the slides or not. Is it visible? Lecture 18, process management.
Yes, sir.
Okay, go through the slides again. We will discuss on next Thursday. If you have any doubts, let me know. We'll stop here. Okay.